There's an island off the coast of China, about the size of the US state of Maryland. And on that island sits one company. If that one company stopped tomorrow, the global economy would seize up within weeks. Your phone, your laptop, every AI on Earth, the world's fighter jets and missiles, all of it would hit a wall. And here's the terrifying part. A lot of very serious people believe this exact island could be the place that starts the next world war. There's even a clock ticking on it. The year everyone keeps whispering is 2027. This is Taiwan. The company is TSMC, and it makes around 90% of the most advanced computer chips on the entire planet. By the end of this video, you'll understand what's called the silicon shield, the strange theory that keeps Taiwan safe, why China desperately wants this island, why the United States is now secretly trying to copy it, and why one factory could trigger the most expensive war in human history. So let's start with the numbers, because they are genuinely hard to believe. TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, makes the chips for Apple, NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, even its own rival, Intel. It produces about 90% of the world's most advanced chips. And get this, roughly 99% of the chips used to train every cutting-edge AI model on Earth come from this one company. In 2025, it pulled in over $120 billion in revenue. By early 2026, it was worth around $2 trillion, one of the most valuable companies in existence. It's so dominant that it makes up close to a third of Taiwan's entire stock market. Step back further, and the chip industry as a whole accounts for roughly 15% of Taiwan's entire economy, an entire nation leaning on silicon. A former US Secretary of State put it bluntly, whoever controls TSMC controls the world economy. So how did a single island end up holding the whole world hostage? And again, it's an underdog story nobody saw coming. Rewind to 1987. A man named Morris Chang in his mid-50s leaves a long career at an American chip giant and moves to Taiwan, where the government hands him a mission: build a semiconductor industry from basically nothing. At the time, Taiwan's economy runs on low-margin, cheap manufacturing. Chang makes one radical bet. Instead of designing and selling its own chips, his company will only manufacture them for other companies, a pure foundry. His promise to customers? We will never compete with you. We just build. And that one idea changes everything. Suddenly, brilliant young companies don't need a multi-billion-dollar factory to exist. They can just design a chip and let TSMC build it. That single decision is the reason NVIDIA, Apple's chips, and the entire modern tech industry exist as we know them. Oh, and a fun detail. One of TSMC's early founding investors was a Dutch electronics company called Philips. Yes, the same Dutch roots behind the machines we talked about last time. Now, here's where it gets dangerous. Because when one island makes the chips the entire planet runs on, that island becomes the most valuable and most vulnerable piece of real estate on Earth. And that gives rise to a theory with a name straight out of a thriller: the silicon shield. The idea is simple and chilling. Taiwan is so critical to the world economy that nobody can afford to let it be destroyed, not even China. If Beijing invaded, the fighting would wreck the factories. The world would lose 90% of its advanced chips overnight. So in theory, those factories are Taiwan's armor. The chips themselves are the thing keeping the tanks away. Sounds reassuring, right? Here's the problem. A lot of experts now think that shield is cracking because the threat is real and it's accelerating. China's leader, Xi Jinping, has reportedly ordered his military to be ready to take Taiwan by 2027. Let me be clear, that's a readiness deadline, not a promise to invade. But back in 2021, a top US admiral warned Congress that an invasion could come by that very same year. That's why you keep hearing it, 2027. And you don't even need a full invasion to cause catastrophe, just a blockade. China's Navy simply surrounding the island and choking off shipping. Bloomberg Economics estimated that a blockade alone could cost the global economy around $5 trillion in the first year. Let that sink in. Not a war, just ships sitting in the water and $5 trillion evaporates. And underneath all of this sits a colder calculation. If those factories were wiped out, the West loses 90% of its advanced chips. But China loses chips it was already banned from buying anyway. So in raw strategic terms, the West has more to lose than Beijing does. That's why some analysts point to the years between roughly 2027 and 2032 as the real danger window. The gap where China might gamble that the West would never actually destroy its own lifeline to stop them. So here's the darkest part of the whole story. The part that sounds like fiction, but military planners genuinely discuss. If China ever did invade, there's a doctrine, sometimes called the Scorched Earth Plan, where Taiwan or the West might deliberately destroy or disable TSMC's factories, rather than let them fall into Beijing's hands. Deny the prize. But here's the twist within the twist. You couldn't just seize these factories and run them anyway. A modern chip fab is breathtakingly fragile. It depends on a constant lifeline of foreign software, specialist chemicals, machine servicing, and the irreplaceable engineers who actually run it. Take the people and the support away, and the most advanced factories on Earth become very expensive, very silent buildings. Owning them means nothing. Which brings us to the move almost nobody is talking about. The United States is quietly trying to copy Taiwan, and the numbers here are staggering. TSMC has committed to a massive build-out in Arizona, a plan that's ballooned to a reported $400 billion plus footprint, with as many as 11 factories. In early 2026, the U.S. and Taiwan signed a trade deal where Taiwanese firms pledged $500 billion in American investment in exchange for lower tariffs. The first Arizona fab is already up and running, and it turned a profit in its very first year. The reason is obvious. America doesn't want its entire technological future sitting 90 miles off the coast of China, and Washington has pushed hard to make it happen. President Donald Trump even floated tariffs of up to 100% on chips made in Taiwan, accusing the island of having stolen America's chip business. TSMC isn't only hedging in Arizona either. It's quietly building new plants in Japan and Germany too, trying to spread itself across friendlier soil. But here's the catch nobody wants to say out loud. The most advanced chips, the absolute bleeding edge, still get made in Taiwan. Morris Chang himself called America's chip-making push a very expensive exercise in futility, because Taiwan's real advantage isn't cheap land. It's 30 years of compounded expertise, culture, and an entire ecosystem. And you cannot copy-paste that into a desert overnight. And that leads to the cruelest paradox in this entire story. The Silicon Shield only protects Taiwan as long as Taiwan is irreplaceable. So every factory TSMC builds in Arizona, every chip America learns to make at home, quietly chips away at the very shield keeping Taiwan safe. The more the world succeeds at copying Taiwan, the less reason anyone has to defend it. So is the United States protecting Taiwan or slowly removing its armor? In the end, this isn't really a story about microchips. It's a story about how the entire modern world, the economy, the technology, the military balance of the planet, is balanced on one island run by one company with a clock ticking in the background. We didn't just build a global civilization on the most advanced technology ever made. We built it on top of the single most contested patch of land on Earth. So here's the question I actually want you to wrestle with, and tell me honestly in the comments. Is the silicon shield Taiwan's greatest protection, or is it the reason it's a target in the first place? If you were running Taiwan, would you guard those factories with everything you have, or would you spread them across the world to make yourself impossible to bully? And if you're wondering what China is doing while all of this unfolds, they're not just waiting. Beijing is pouring over $100 billion into building its own TSMC from scratch. And how close they actually are will genuinely shock you. That's the video on your screen right now. Go watch it. Thanks for watching.